This tutorial demonstrates how to use my frequency separation plugin for GIMP. There are versions for both GIMP 3 and GIMP 2, links in the description below. When you have the plugin installed, click on Frequency Separation in the Layer menu. The plugin first asks you to specify a blur for the color/tone layer. This step is required for any frequency separation work. That's because the color and tone layer contains so-called low frequency, aka not detailed, information about the image. The texture layer contains the detailed, high-frequency information. Specify a number of pixels for the Gaussian blur. Normally a value of between 2 and 10 will work well. Whatever value you choose, make sure to zoom in so you can see details like pores on a person's face. Select a blur value that makes those details disappear, but not so much that the whole image is unrecognizable. You can also accept the default 5 pixels. Use the plus and minus buttons to adjust the value in little steps. Or you can type a whole number in the field, then press Tab, to see how it will look. In this example, 1 pixel isn't blurred enough. And 22 pixels is blurred too much. I'll choose 4 pixels just as an example. Click OK and the plugin will finish creating the frequency separation group consisting of 2 layers for you to work with, a texture layer and a layer for color and tone. Once those layers have been added to your image, you'll see a final confirmation message that includes instructions on how to use the 2 different layers. Use the clone or healing tools on the texture layer, and selective blurs and the paintbrush on the color/tone layer. It's usually best to start with the color/tone layer. You want to make sure general issues like skin color are sorted out before working on details in the texture layer. I find that sometimes something I want to adjust looks like a texture issue but is really affected by a color issue. So if you minimize the color issues, you can focus more effectively on texture. In this image, I'll start with the forehead. The skin colors are a little patchy and I'd like to even them out. One quick way is to select an area you want to harmonize using a lasso selection. You don't want to be too precise with the selection because you'll need to feather the selection quite a lot to blend the effect seamlessly. You can use a quick mask to visualize the selection and adjust it with a soft brush if needed. This selection is fine for this example. Next, apply a Gaussian blur to the selection, making sure that the color and tone layer is the active layer. You want to blur so that the color and tone in the selection dissolves just enough so that it looks realistic and harmonious. Thanks to the new non-destructive layer editing in GIMP 3, you can turn layer adjustments on and off. You can also delete layer adjustments and even modify them without losing them and having to start over. As a side note, the developers have taken a similar approach to Photoshop's smart object filters. But I think the GIMP 3 approach is much more flexible, and a lot faster too. This is one of the great enhancements available in GIMP 3. There are other areas of this face where I want to equalize color and tone. For now, I'll move on to adjusting texture. First, select the texture layer. Then use either the clone or healing tool to gradually work on pores, lines, and any other texture issues that haven't been resolved using the Gaussian blur on the color/tone layer. I prefer using the healing tool because I think it gives a more natural result. It's important to make sure you have opacity set to 100, and a very low force. That combination creates a seamless, gradual effect. In GIMP terminology, force is equivalent to flow in Photoshop. Zoom in, so you can see the details you're working on closely. Gradually replace details with the healing or clone tool with nearby details. Because you're working with a low force, you can move the tool back and forth to build up the effect you want. Change your source pixels often using the Control or Command key. That ensures you don't end up with an obvious copy and paste from one area to another. You may see desaturation or other color changes that you don't like after applying Gaussian blurs on the color/tone layer. That's easy to fix. In this case we can see this shadowed area has desaturated. I like to remedy color issues on a separate color layer instead of on the color/tone layer itself. Using a separate layer set to color mode allows me to adjust color selectively and non-destructively. Use a very soft brush, with opacity set to 100, and force set very low. When you paint over the desaturated area, build up the color effect very gradually to avoid oversaturation. So now that you've seen the process, I'll do the same work on his left cheek. I'll fast forward so you get the idea quickly. I would normally take much more time and care with this process. But since I'm just demonstrating how frequency separation editing works, I'll only briefly show some tips and techniques. You'll see how you can use them in your own work. Sometimes it's helpful to show just the texture layer or just the color and tone layer. Focusing just on the texture layer here, it's easier to see texture details that I can minimize. Let's take a look at progress so far. Turning the frequency separation group off and on, we can see what a major difference these small edits have made. I'm going to soften some of the lines on his face, but not get rid of them completely. My goal in this exercise is to minimize distractions to draw the viewer's attention to his eyes. Here again, you can see the benefit of using the healing tool with a very low force. I can build up the effect gently. The color and tone on the nose would be difficult to equalize using the select and Gaussian blur process. Instead, I'll use the color layer and a soft brush. I'll increase the force to build up the effect more quickly. I've gone ahead and worked on the rest of his face. Of course I could continue to refine the work. But for this tutorial, enough is enough, you get the idea. Whenever you use frequency separation, first think about your goal, whether to minimize distractions, improve overall appearance, whatever. Also think about whether you want to modify structure via light and shadow using dodging and burning. Dodging and burning is a separate process. I also have a GIMP plugin to make that easy. See the links in the description below. And please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions.